Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Neuro-Inclusive Dog Pod, the podcast where we bridge the gap between neurodiversity and the dog world. So today I have got a fantastic guest coming on to speak to you guys, and it's a guest I'm really glad he's agreed to come on and talk to you because it's somebody that's on the same kind of mission as me. We share the same values, and I will probably do it an injustice if I try and introduce her. So I'm going to let her introduce herself. So hi, Sasha, thank you for coming on the podcast and talking to us.
You're very welcome, and thank you for asking me to come on. Like you said, there's a lot of crossover in terms of what we do and what we're passionate about. So yeah, more than happy to come on and have a little bit of a chat. So as always, to get the slightly awkward introductions out of the way, if anyone's new and hasn't come across me online, my name is Sasha and I'm a neuro-inclusive business coach and mentor. I've been in the industry for just over 10 years. It was actually 10 years ago last month. And I've been working almost exclusively with dog trainers, behavioural practitioners since just before COVID. I do have a couple of outliers, but most of the time I work with dog professionals, and I work one-on-one and also run a membership as well. So a little bit about me is I have a professional diploma in coaching, and I also hold an advanced certification in neuro-inclusive practice. And the reason why is I was diagnosed with ADHD in 2021-ish, thereabouts. Obviously, COVID was a little bit of a blur for many of us. And that experience for me was genuinely a really pivotal moment in my own self-development and understanding, as an individual as well as a business owner. Prior to that, I've always struggled with anxiety, depression, real low self-confidence, really struggled to do a lot of kind of the day-to-day business tasks, and understanding that I had ADHD and going down the rabbit hole of kind of learning a little bit more about what that diagnosis meant, and then starting to make changes and adapt, like how I run my business has made a huge difference. Obviously there's still more work to do, but it's definitely helped. And through that experience I started talking about it a little bit online, as you do. And what I learned is actually how many business owners, particularly in the industry, were already diagnosed with ADHD, autism, dyslexia, or suspected they might be, but just hadn't yet went down the diagnosis route. And yeah, from there, just started having conversations, went and did the certification, and just really started kind of changing what I'd been doing previously to make it a little bit more neuro-inclusive. So I always find it quite difficult to explain like the nuts and bolts of what I do, but if I had to try, basically my job is to kind of bridge the gap for people between the very kind of practical business strategy, so the things that we need to do practically to run our businesses, to grow our businesses, develop our businesses, from marketing, the back end of things, finance, schedule, all of the things that don't just include marketing, everything else that go along with that, to bridge that with the actual emotional side of things. And that's the things that aren't discussed often enough, in my opinion. So helping people to work through fear, avoidance, overwhelm, manage stress, run businesses while being parents, run businesses while having other jobs, other things going on, that can really pull our focus. And then when you layer on top, forms of neurodiversity, there can be some challenges. So I kind of blend all those things together and very much work with the person in front of me. And that's like one of my kind of fundamental values that we've obviously spoken about before, is every single business owner is an individual. Every single business is different, and how we approach that is going to look unique to the person that we're working with. So yeah, a little bit of a introduction in a nutshell from me.
Yeah, and I think it's super interesting, and it's like you say, there is a little bit of crossover and stuff. And I think sometimes in the dog training world, we can think, oh, someone just similar to me, and avoid them or the competition or anything like this. And we were just chatting a little bit before, and like, even though I think it's a good thing, that because I'll have clients that, are at a level that I'm ready to say, I don't deal with that, but I pass them to you, and this, that, and the other. And I think as a neurodivergent person, or even as a neurotypical person in the dog world, it can be quite challenging, can't it, to find that level of people that you feel comfortable enough with. And there's quite a lot of competition. So from coming from an agility background, when I'm used to competition and used to that level of competitiveness, I think in the business world, I think I view things a little bit slightly differently. So I'm like, I love the fact that we're very, we're similar. You're a lot further on with the clients that you work with, but it's nice to have people that are, understand it, that get the neurodivergent needs, that understand that this is what it can be like. We do struggle with these kind of things, and someone to like just chat to and think like, actually, I'm not quite sure of this. So for example, if I wasn't sure on something, I'd be like, oh, maybe I could pop you a question, or that kind of like that friendliness. But having that level of neurodiversity, I think sometimes we're like, oh, I daren't approach anybody else, I daren't, there's so many things that happen, that isn't there, that can stop us from progressing or stop us from creating these little communities, because neurodivergence kind of makes us go, oh my gosh, I'm a bit worried too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. It's difficult to build up those relationships because of, some of the challenges that come along with, individual presentations of neurodiversity, past experiences. You've mentioned that you've come from the agility background, which, I know comes with some of its challenges, but having, whether you're a dog business owner and looking to work with colleagues, having people that you can reach out to, just, hop on a call with, ask for support, ask a question is really important. And that's, one of the reasons that we're here today, is just to show that even if you are someone who does a very similar thing, that you can actually build up, community and people around about you, because I think that's a really, really important thing that's not spoken about enough.
Yeah, definitely. And that is a massive like part of what I want to do with the podcast and with everything else I do. It's creating this community, because I think as neurodivergent people, we can feel so isolated, can't we? And we can struggle with things, and we're in that community of people that get it and that are friendly, and that you can just, that genuinely don't mind, because they're like, yeah, it's fine, we help each other, kind of thing. So you mentioned that you work with mostly neurodivergent business owners and things. Could you share some of the common challenges that you see your clients facing, and how you help them to navigate those challenges in their businesses?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. So, as I share these things, not all of them are going to be exclusive to neurodivergent business owners. Like, they're things that everyone will struggle with at certain times in their business development. But I suppose when I'm sharing them just now, I'm thinking about at a potentially greater degree, where it has more of an impact on the business owner longer term.
Yeah.
So, no particular order, these are just the things that come up in client sessions, come up in conversations in groups. Big ones are, a lot of clients struggle with the other aspects of running their business. So not necessarily so much the client delivery. That's obviously the part that they're really passionate about. They love learning, they love looking after people, working with people and their dogs. Yes, there can be some challenges with that, but most often it's all of the other things that go on behind the scenes of running a business. And it's everything that's scheduling. That can be a huge challenge for a lot of neurodivergent people. Thinking how long times take, sometimes we can find that really challenging. So running our own diaries, making sure that we're not double booking, missing things, running late, those can be quite common things that come up that people really struggle with. Emails is a huge one. Obviously,
Yeah.
the longer you are in business, the more points of contact that you might have. So, emails, WhatsApp, Facebook messages, contact forms, the website, there's so many different ways that people can get in contact with you. And sometimes people describe that if they're having a good day, they can get those things done. But on another day, all of those forms of communication feels like too much. So
Yeah.
quite often people can find that their emails will just stack up, and then
Yeah.
that can be really overwhelming. And then it's like, oh my God, I've got this thing hanging over me. And it can be quite a difficult loop to work through. Rejection sensitivity, you've mentioned it. So again, not necessarily exclusive to neurodiversity, but it is one of the common characteristics. So if anyone's unfamiliar with RSD, basically it's our emotional response to either actual rejection or perceived rejection. So some examples might be if, let's say, you're listening and you've had a call with a potential client, you've spent time getting to know them, understanding what's going on with their dog, they've sounded really positive, you think they're going to book, and then you get an email a couple of days later to say, no, sorry, not right now, or, I've decided to go elsewhere. So for some people, it'd be a wee bit disappointing, but it wouldn't ruin their day. For people who struggle with RSD, then that can sometimes end up opening up a little bit of an emotional can of worms, and that we start to really, really over question ourselves and kind of take that blame on. So did I not do enough? Did I say something wrong? We take it really, really personally, and that can be quite difficult to work through if you don't know what's going on. It can also show up in our marketing as well. So again, one of the many, many things that I talk to people about is the avoidance of, putting ourselves out there on social media. And quite often, I hear from clients that they'll put a piece of content out there and it's maybe not quite got the level of engagement, the response that they were hoping for. Now, again, some people would just take it as a piece of information and move on and create another piece of content. But for some people, that can feel really, really personal. And again, it might start to flag up, self-doubt, imposter syndrome. We might find that we start to fixate on someone else's business, why are they getting that response and we're not. So those are the things that, are not necessarily covered in a normal business course, but for me are very, very much barriers for business owners to work through. So those are a couple of things. But again, there's many, many different presentations and variations of how that might look for every individual.
It's so interesting. As you've been talking there, my brain has been going, yep, I've done that before, I felt that before, and there's so many little light bulb moments that's going on, and it's interesting, like you say, like coming at it from the other kind of angle, like where we do go and we'll do a Zoom call with a client or whatever, and then for whatever reason they don't book, and then we're like, oh, is it something I said? Did I say something wrong? Do they think I'm a rubbish trainer? Was my prices too high or whatever it is? And then you can go down this spiral, can't you? And I think it's very easy to then go, actually, I am the problem type of thing, when actually it might be something completely nothing to do with you. Maybe their car's just broken down, they've got a massive bill from the garage or something. And it's so interesting that and it's so valuable really that you're doing this kind of work in with dog trainers, because I think a lot of when we talk about that next level of, we've been chatting a little bit before we started recording, and when you get to that level where you've got a dog business, you've been doing it a few years or whatever, and you think, actually, I want to do a bit more for whatever reason, maybe I want to work on this kind of area. And I think it's like super interesting, because you kind of go, actually, I'm so used to working with dogs and this kind of thing, but now I need to move to that next level of business. And what I've found as well is, when you come to start looking and learning about the nuts and bolts of business and things, and just one of the things you said there about a post that didn't get as much likes or interaction, and then that can lead you down this, I'm not good enough kind of thing. It might be because the person, rightly so, doesn't understand about, I don't know, how the social media, that particular platform works, or the algorithm, or they have to see things so many times to actually just then feel like they like, know and trust you and they can buy from you. There's all these other things going on, but I think as a neurodivergent business person, you automatically go to that emotional side of your brain and go, oh, it must be me, and those kind of things. And one of the things I found when I was looking at traditional business marketing advice, that kind of thing, oh, you have to do it this set way and you have to do it that set way. And if I didn't do it that set way because it didn't align with what, I didn't feel comfortable doing that, or I just didn't understand it or whatever, it felt like I was the problem. And do you find that with the clients you help, that traditional business advice doesn't always suit them? And how in your business do you help them with that? Do you make certain adaptations to allowances for that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I think like going back to like the traditional business advice, it's really interesting. So when I started my business 10 years ago, there wasn't really a lot of business guidance out there at that time. Like I remember looking, and I think like at most there was like local things like through Business Gateway, you know, but it was very general business.
Yeah.
You know, not dog industry specific. You know, obviously at that time I didn't know about my diagnosis, so I didn't, like you, I didn't find it particularly helpful. It felt very, it just didn't feel like it fitted me and the business. So I found it quite difficult to connect with. Obviously, since then, obviously a lot's changed, particularly since COVID. There's been a huge volume of you know, courses and memberships and different groups and places that people can get support, which is amazing that there's so much choice out there. But I think on the flip side, because there's so much choice, it can be really difficult for people to know what support is going to actually work best for them.
Yeah.
So just a kind of like general piece of advice is, if you are getting to that point where you feel like you need a little bit of support with your business, but you're just not sure where to start, is to just have a look about and see what's available, have a think about what you need based on your own business, based on what you want from your business, and also have a think about what do you feel would support you best. So, for example, there's some amazing self-paced courses out there that are really phenomenal in terms of like the business development. But if you're someone who kind of stops and starts things, you know, it might not have the level of inbuilt support that you need to get the most out of that investment in your time. Whereas if you're someone who loves being in a community and you really enjoy, you know, collaborating with people and you find that really supportive, then actually that might be a better route for you. So I would always say shop about, ask about, you know, have a think about actually what support do you need? Do you need the strategy? Do you need support working through, you know, your own fears? You know, is it a little bit of both? Just so that you can find what's going to be most supportive for you. So that's kind of one piece. In terms of clients, I think, again, I work with a wide variety of people, and there's definitely times where, you know, maybe we're working on something and it's not quite gelling with them. So one of the things that, you know, I've kind of learned to do over the last 5 years is to not take that personally.
Yeah.
And again, a big theme that comes up for me is to recognize the difference between someone who can't do something versus someone who won't. And this applies to both dog businesses and also dog trainers who are working with clients, and I'll maybe share more about that at the end. So if I'm working with a client and they're coming up against something, it's my job to try and figure out why that is. So is it that they maybe need a little bit more context? So maybe I've shared something with them and they don't quite understand why I've suggested it or how it's relevant to them, or maybe I've missed something. So a lot of my job is to ask questions. So to stay quiet and to ask a lot of questions and understand my client's perspective, what they've tried, what has worked, what hasn't worked, what do they feel they want to do, and then from there we can maybe, you know, move things forward. And a big part of it is experimentation. So, you know, if we're trying to do something in a business, it is going to take time, and sometimes we do need to pivot and change things. So that might look like me breaking it down in a slightly different way, presenting the information in a slightly different way, you know, helping the client work through discomfort, which honestly a lot of the time it is discomfort. So again, it's obviously going to be different for every single person, but I think, yeah, mostly it's just me being willing to listen, make changes, try different things.
Yeah, definitely. That's super important, isn't it? I always talk about that and the flexibility. And I think it doesn't matter whether you're coming at it from a business point of view or a dog training point of view. I think it's that it's the massive theme that there's no one size fits all. And I think when we're doing as dog trainers or the behaviorists or whatever, we look at the dog in front of us and we go, oh right, we need to tweak this or we need to be flexible with this. Like there's an overarching kind of formula that we use. However, we need to adapt that to suit the dog and at the time and things. And that's very much the same with businesses, isn't it? And that's massive thing of just being flexible and also creating the spaces that allow people to open up and feel safe enough to kind of show you them their true selves. Because I think a lot of it, especially with neurodivergent people, we mask a lot, or even neurotypical people, they might not feel comfortable, like, oh, I don't know, I don't share this part of my business. Or, you know, for example, I don't know, maybe somebody doesn't like video calls, and maybe, you know, it's suggested to do video calls all the time, and then it's like, well, if I say I don't like doing video calls, then they're going to think I'm stupid or whatever. But it's, I suppose it's creating that relationship that's safe enough for them to go, actually, I just feel, you know, I'm just going to tell you how it is, I'm really struggling with this. And I think that's a big part of the neurodivergence, isn't it, creating these spaces that are, that people feel. One of my lines is creating spaces that to allow people to feel safe, seen and supported. And that's like a really important thing to me, because I think a lot of my anxiety, my backstory is that 11 years ago, I was that anxious I couldn't leave the house. And I was like, I got a dog, my first dog, Milo, just to help me leave the house, because I needed to take him for a walk, and everything kind of went from there. And I think when you've got that level of anxiety, I think it's kind of like trying to put yourself out there and trying to like think, actually, I don't feel safe enough. And throughout the training history, when I look back on things, a lot of my training issues, like when I was training my dog and stuff, came from the fact that I didn't feel safe in that environment. And I mean emotionally safe. I mean, I was not going to come to any harm or anything like that. And I think safety is a massive part of it that sometimes gets overlooked, because when we speak about safety, we automatically think, you know, physical harm or anything like that. And I think it's a massive part of me to, you know, with my clients and whatever, to make them feel so they can just be themselves. We can be flexible, we can adapt things. It doesn't matter if things go wrong, you know, there's always that flexibility. And I think that makes people feel a lot more comfortable and just open up a lot more. Do you find that with your clients as well?
Yeah, it's like emotional safety is at the heart of everything. And like you say, I think a lot of the time when we think about safety, we do think about physical safety, and you know, a lot of the time that is a given, you know, in the context that I'm working with.
Yeah.
But within any working relationship, having that trust and safety and rapport is so important, because, you know, in the context of working with dog business owners, they're letting me into some of the most vulnerable parts of their life. You know, I'm very fortunate. I've developed long working relationships with clients. Some of my clients have been with for 3 or 4 years, and I'm, you know, very much privy to a lot of the behind the scenes, because, you know, our businesses aren't standalone. We have lives outside of our businesses, and those have an impact on, you know, our capacity, our time, you know, how much we're able to do. So the more clients feel safe and able to share everything with me and just let it out on the table, gives me so much more scope and understanding of their context, where they are just now, what headspace they're in, so that we can kind of untangle that together and come up with a plan. So quite often, you know, even long-term clients, they'll come to a call and they're like, and this is going on, and this is going on, and this has went wrong, and, you know, I feel behind here, and, you know, so we unpack it together, and, you know, together we come up with a plan. We always check in with, you know, what direction they're going in, what's important to them, but ultimately it's giving them a space where they don't need to be responsible, they don't need to look after everyone, and they can just have that time to process their own thoughts, which, again, going back to the emotional safety thing, is so important, to work through some of those feelings that we might not necessarily be aware of, to reduce stress and have a way of being able to process in amongst all of our busy week and seeing clients and admin and, you know, parenting and looking after our own dogs and things like that. So yeah, safety is definitely there, and it's not a given. It takes time. It's, you know, it's got to be built. But it makes a huge difference when you can build that with people, so that they know, like you say, that they can be themselves. They don't have to be perfect. They don't have to get it right all the time. They can just come as they are and trust that it will be okay and they'll be safe.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting. And I think what I find with my clients, whether it's a dog training client or whatever, once you kind of, when they understand that they can just be themselves with you, and they can admit the faults, or, you know, I'm not having a good day, or this happens, I think you get to that kind of level with clients, I think that's where a lot of the magic kind of stuff happens, because we're getting to the kind of root cause of things now. And because I know that, I can adapt what I'm asking you to do to help you in the best possible way. But they have to feel that way, don't they, before they actually open up and before you get that magic kind of formula, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely.
So another thing that I have learned massively in the last couple of years, particularly since having my diagnosis, is like I say, I didn't know I was neurodivergent until last June, so we're coming up for a year now. And then everything kind of like ticked into place. And then once I started to understand it a little bit more and go, actually, oh, this makes sense and that makes sense, is I realized that in my own businesses that my internal values were like not actually being that reflected in what I was doing in terms of, let's just use my agility as an example. So for example, I was teaching a lot of beginner clients, they were at the very start of their journey and things, and because of my ADHD, because I'm like hyperfixate on things and I'm very attention to detail and very black and white, very, very into details and intricacies, that doesn't necessarily fit with people who want to learn beginner agility. Not that there's anything wrong with that, it's just that they're at a different stage of their journey, basically. So what was happening to me is I was very busy. I was teaching lots and lots of clients, but I was coming home and I was just completely burnt out and wiped out. And I couldn't work out why until I got my diagnosis. And I was like, oh, actually, what I found out I was doing, I was kind of like masking and giving them everything they need. They had a really, I was really busy. They had a really lovely time when they was training with me. But deep down, my values didn't connect with the people I was serving, because I wanted to be like, they wanted to go and do the jumps and the tunnels or whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see the dog was maybe needing to work on disengagement, or we needed to talk through reinforcement strategy or something like that. And it just wasn't aligning. So I was coming home super burnt out. And what I actually did is I took a bit of a break at the time. And I was like, at the time, I didn't realize I was in burnout, but I was like, don't even want to do agility anymore. I don't even know why I've got agility dogs. Let's just get rid of the lot. Do you know what I mean? And then I kind of like thought about it, sat on it a little bit, made sense to me. And I was like, actually, I need to just tweak my whole business. So I came back and, now I focus very much on agility behavior and solving people's problems of people that are usually competing or at that level that have hit a few roadblocks. And that's, completely rebranded, started talking about myself a little bit more. But I think the heart of that was because my values didn't align with my actual business. And I think from speaking to you previously, I think that's one thing that we do have in common, isn't it? Of having these values-led businesses and how important it is. So do you see that in the work that you help with your clients, basically? And how do you help them to reflect their values through their businesses?
I think there's so many threads that conversation brings up. So with values, if you'd asked me 10 years ago to be able to describe what my values were, probably wouldn't have been able to find the language. Mm-hmm. And it's only, in the last couple of years that, I'm starting to feel clearer on that. It's coming across the marketing, and I definitely have that reflected back in the clients I work with. Like, I have phenomenal clients. Mm-hmm. So I think the whole values conversation, what I'm hearing in your share is actually taking time to think about what we want, mm-hmm. What makes us happy, what brings us a sense of fulfillment, and actually just checking in to see, is that actually how I'm spending my time? Because mm-hmm. no matter what business stage you are, whether you're just starting out or, been in business a long time, we do all fall into familiar patterns of just doing the same thing because that's what we've always done. And, like you're saying, your clients were really, really happy and they were coming away and they were still getting a fantastic service, but you weren't able to go into the level of depth that really sets your soul on fire, which is why you were feeling exhausted. So even if you're listening and you are like, values, like I'm I know what my ethics are, I know what my morals are, but I might not be able to describe my values, is even just to start with thinking about those questions of like, what do you enjoy? Like, if money was off the table, what would you be doing with your dogs, other people's dogs? Like, what really, really makes you happy? And just start to write that down, speak it out loud, maybe even phone a friend, like someone that you feel comfortable with, and just play in the possibility, explore that and just notice how it feels in your body. Mm-hmm. So again, we're not always going to be able to change things overnight, but let's say that there is an aspect of your business that you would love to do more of. Is there a client that you're already working with that you could have that conversation with? Is it something that you could create a new service for? Is it, what could you do so that you can start to enjoy that? Again, when it comes to kind of passion, purpose, values, is not being scared to follow the things that interest you. That's one of the things that I have to continually remind myself. I'm very passionate about business, but I'm also equally, if not a little bit more so, passionate about human behaviour and what drives us and what gets us in their way. And I used to feel really guilty about following that because I should be focused on just business strategy. But actually, this is the part that really lights me up and makes a difference. So I think when I'm working with clients, if they're describing what you're saying of like, I just want to give it up, I want to go and get a job in Tesco's, like I can't do this anymore. There could be many things going on, but one of the things that we might kind of look at together is what are you not enjoying about your business? Is it a certain person? Is it some of your clients? Is it some of the work? What is it? Can we narrow that down and then start to think about, okay, how can we do more with what you enjoy? Start to bring that joy back and take that time to do it.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? And I think it's like, it's one of these things like we've spoken about before when I work with my agility clients, is there's always so much more going on than the actual behavior that they want to train themselves. And I think it's just being open to that. And like you say, sometimes we just need to sit down, especially when I'm teaching agility clients. It's like, I was speaking to somebody a few weeks ago now, and the dog was having problems getting off the start line, and I was like, okay, is it, it's always been like this, but it's got worse in this, like length of time. And I was like, we had to kind of really dig deep into it and just sit down and think about it. And what it transpired to be is the dog's moved up the grades quite quickly, but it wasn't a dog, it was a dog confidence issue because of picking up on the handler pressure, because the handler had gone, I want that dog in grade 7 by July. And because of that, and it was actually the values and the expectations more than values that the handler wanted that was creating this other problem. And I think just sitting down, like if I was just dealing with the behavior of the dogs slow off the start line, if we hadn't have gone, actually, what is it that let's just have a minute, if there's no judgment here, if you could have an ideal world, what is it that you're wanting from agility? What is it that you're focusing on? And it's similar to the same as what you're saying here, is it's like just being honest and taking that time and thinking, in an ideal world, what do we actually want from our business or whatever. And I think there's so much expectation out there, and other trainers are doing this, so I need to be doing that, or everybody's going to this latest course, so I need to be doing that. And it's a lot, isn't it? And I think sometimes you can get swept away with the hype of a lot of things, and you can get led down that path of, I know I certainly fell for it when I was just starting to do my training qualifications, that I need to be doing this course, or I need to be doing that course. And you end up throwing loads of money away and wasting time and energy on something that you'll probably never use again, because actually it doesn't really matter to you and it's not really what you want for your business. So yeah, it's super interesting when we get to the nitty-gritty parts of everything. And I think one of the things I've found when speaking to either clients or agility people, whatever it might be, is the fact that as neurodivergent people, we often don't always make considerations for how our energy levels fluctuate. So, and how they can fluctuate on a day-to-day basis. So with me having both autism and ADHD, I can wake up one day and I like the structure and the routine that my autism kind of will get wants, craves. But then other days I'll be like, no, I'm going to do like 700 hours work in like 3 hours and just have that hyper focus and things. And I think when it comes to dog business owners, one of the things I've definitely struggled with, and you probably find this with your clients, is managing those levels of energy and those fluctuations. There you are, that was really hard for me to say. Fluctuations of energy levels. How do you support that kind of those kind of things for your clients, and what kind of advice could you give for anybody struggling with that?
Yeah, energy management is definitely a really common thing. It's one thing that I still struggle with, and it can be incredibly frustrating when one part of your brain wants to go and you've got the ideas and you know what you want to do, and there's another part of your brain that is just not allowing you to move forward, either because you've got really bad brain fog or physically you're really, really tired. And again, there could be other physical health conditions that layer on top of this, which obviously, is important to take into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
So what I say to everyone, and when I work with any clients, is I kind of jokingly say we need to treat ourselves in our businesses a little bit like a mad science experiment. And a big part of what I do is how can we increase awareness on our own patterns without shaming ourselves. So I kind of say name it but don't shame it. So for example, you might find, and this is not always the case, sometimes it's not as predictable, but chances are there will be some degree of predictability when you find your energy levels drop. So for some clients, they find if they've been delivering classes all day, obviously on one hand it's physically demanding, you're out and about in a field for hours, you're moving equipment round about, you're running up and down the place. But actually the part that they find draining is the delivery aspect of it, and having to really focus their brain, make sure they're being clear, looking after everyone, and they can find that they have a big energy slump afterwards. So it might be that we need to look at schedules. So it might be making some adaptations to your schedule. Obviously, we do need to take into consideration the business goals and all of those things. But on a personal level, having a think about, is there any changes that you could make that would be more supportive for you? So, for example, one of the changes that I made for me a couple of years ago, and I've stuck with it, it's been a really consistent thing, is I have a kind of rolling calendar. So basically there's 3 weeks out of the month that is quite intensive. I quite like working in that way, and a time block. So some days I'll be working with clients, some days I'll be working on admin, and then the fourth week is a flexible working week. So that means for me that I can be in quite a high volume of client delivery, so working with clients one-on-one, doing group calls, but every single 4 weeks there's a couple of days where I can decompress, I can focus on other things, which I appreciate might not be an option for everyone, but there could potentially be some small changes. As well, it might be noticing, is there actually an upper limit on how many sessions that you can do and deliver in a day? Not because there's anything wrong with you, not because you're incapable, but actually there might just be an upper limit. So for some people that could be 2 sessions, 3 sessions, 4, 5. It's about finding what your capacity limit is and working accordingly around about that. So it's trial and error. Again, having to think, is there certain tasks that really just like on a cognitive level you find difficult. So again, one of the things that we know is depending on presentation of neurodiversity, also stress levels, hormones, sleep, rest, so many different factors that can influence our executive functioning. That's responsible for like so many things, organizing our thoughts, planning, problem solving, decision making, all of those things. So sometimes it might be that, we might need to change our week so that we're doing like those heavy cognitive tasks on a different day at a different time. Another example is actually giving yourself permission to not work a standard schedule. So one of the things that I see come up a lot is that people naturally fall into the rhythm of working 9 to 5, or working certain days because that's what they've always done. It's okay to take a day off midweek and work a Saturday if you want. It's okay to work evenings and have a slower start to your morning. I've got some clients who can bash out admin at 11 o'clock at night. I'm in my bed personally. I couldn't think of anything worse than doing admin at that time of night. But that's what works for them. So they'll do that, then they'll start their day later in the morning. So it's just noticing, making changes, trying different things, and just seeing and recognizing it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be completely perfect. You're still going to have days where your energy fluctuates. We can't control everything, and it's part of being human, but where could we potentially support ourselves and make changes that could help?
Yeah, and that's really interesting there, is like listening to what you were saying about the diary thing and looking at how many clients you can take on, like what your upper limit is. And it's something that I fell victim to, because I thought, I know I should be able to, I've got this amount of time so I can pack so many clients in that, I'm already at the agility field, so I may as well, because I'm
Yeah.
there. And then I'd come home and I'd be like, why do I feel like so dizzy and like brain fog and tired? And I just feel completely awful, to where the afternoon is ruined because you can't do anything but lie on the sofa. And like, this was before I realized I was neurodivergent. And I was like, what is wrong with me? And I think it's having that flexibility and knowing that it's okay to do what's right for you. So now I don't book as many clients in. I don't, I'll do a few, and then I'll do them again on a different day. And like I say, no one week is the same. And I think we're so used to, oh, this is what we do. And especially when we compare with other dog businesses and stuff, we say, well, we need to be doing that because they're doing that. And actually, we're going to give our clients a lot better service if we focus on, how we manage our own energy levels and, look after that. Because, we always have to look, not from a selfish point of view, but from a self-care point of view, we have to look after ourselves first, and then we can give the best service outwards. Because if we're drained and tired and, short of sleep or whatever, then how can we deliver that best service for our clients? Because we're just going to be, emotionally and physically kind of all over the place, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's a difficult one because again, when you're someone who is really, really passionate about what you do,
Mm.
sometimes we don't even notice ourselves doing it. We're doing it because of our own enthusiasm and our own love for the job, and then we wonder why, we're
Yeah.
tired and burnt out. So it's still maintaining that enthusiasm, but and again, one of the kind of fundamental things I talk about is we're building businesses for the long term, not the short term. That's sustainability. So yes, short term we can maybe sustain that level of enthusiasm, but over time, possibly thinking about making some changes just so that you can do it for longer.
Yeah, and that's so important. In fact, I was having a conversation with somebody this week about agility training and saying, we might need to, I always say we're playing the long game with agility. We don't want to just go in and have a bit of fun today. It's about, like you say, understanding that we can do these things now, but what impact is that going to have longer term? And it's like very similar to what you're saying. And yeah, it's super interesting when you look at all of the little things that go into everything. And I think one of the things that I love about speaking to you is the fact that we've got so much in common when it comes to raising awareness of neurodiversity in the pet industry. And that's like one of my main issues, to like, I want to spread more awareness, get more people like understanding that how important it is to understand the human side of things. Because when we understand the human, we can, from as a dog trainer's perspective, you can help the dog more. Or, once you understand yourself as a neurodivergent business owner, you can get more out of your business, because when you understand the human part of it, everything else kind of falls into place. And one of the big things that I want to do is kind of raise more awareness for dog professionals when it comes to their neurodivergent clients. So do you have any advice on how pet professionals can help, maybe if they've got neurodivergent clients in their class, how can they help better serve them, and why that kind of matters so much when it comes to dog businesses?
Yeah, and it is a really, really good question. Obviously, like you said, it's definitely something that we're both passionate about. So I can come at things from like the business end of things. So it does come up in conversation just naturally, obviously, as we're discussing things. And I think the one thing to say is just even acknowledging it's a thing. Like obviously there's been a huge increase in discussion and awareness over the last 5 years. Obviously there's been some polarizing things in the media, but even just engaging with conversations, even if you're not someone who's neurodiverse, just being aware about it, recognizing it's not just some sensational thing that is in the media. It's not, all the things that you hear online, but these are real people. These are your friends, these are your colleagues, these are your clients who could potentially be struggling with something that they might not even know is going on for them. So one of the things that I always say is, I'm no doctor. I'm not here to, diagnose anyone. So if a client tells me they are neurodiverse, I am not, I'm not questioning the validity of that. I don't care whether or not they have a piece of paper. As far as I'm concerned, we adapt things. So thinking about it through a dog business lens, chances are, not always, but your clients are not necessarily going to come forward in the initial contact point and self-disclose and say that I have ADHD, I have autism, I'm dyslexic. They might do, But I would say, just, based on experience, it won't necessarily come up until later, or possibly not even at all. So as a kind of first stepping stone, just being aware it's a thing. The second thing is, at initial contact points, when you're speaking to potential clients on the phone, or maybe even onboarding forms, contact emails, is two changes that I would suggest as a starting point. One, having a think about the language that we're using. Is it possible that we can be a wee bit clearer in our instructions? If we're unsure, can we get a friend to look at it? Does this make sense? Could we make any changes? So that would be one thing. The second thing is, a lot of the time, particularly in initial phone calls, a lot of the discussion is around about the dog's behaviour. When did the problem start? Has there been any, vet visits, any illnesses, history, all of those things. What have you tried? What are you looking for? What brought you here? And all those things, of course, are so important. But there is potentially room, whether it's initial phone call or actually doing maybe the first session or the first consultation, is to ask the clients, some questions about what support they might need. So I wouldn't necessarily suggest that you directly ask. You can do. Everyone's going to have different feelings on that, but you could say, when it comes to support in between sessions, do you prefer written support, or would you like another form of support, voice notes? Do you just want a couple of bullet points? Do you like a long thing? Just to give people the opportunity to ask for what they need. Again, if you offer some type of contact in between client sessions, if you're running behavioural packages, asking clients, do they want a phone call or do they want to do it on Zoom? And letting people know that they've got that choice. So again, I do most of my work on Zoom. I have clients who would much rather we do a phone call. I do a phone call, not a problem. So just giving people that option. And again, I kind of touched on this earlier. I know how frustrating it can be when you're working with a client and you can see the potential that the dog has, and you've given them all the management advice and you've really poured a lot into them, and they come to the next session and they're still frustrated. They've done the opposite of the advice that you've given them. Nothing's changed, and it feels like you're doing all the work and they're not. And I completely get that it can be very frustrating. It's obviously something that I help clients with, is the emotional side of things. But to just have a think, what I said earlier about the difference between can versus won't, is the reason that the client's not following through on something because they have misheard, misinterpreted, they don't fully understand. There's a barrier in the way that you're not aware of. So being willing to ask questions, even while you're feeling frustrated, just to see if the client might potentially need some sort of adaptation or change made, that would help.
Definitely. It's so important. And I think that's it, just opening up and asking the relevant questions, but doing it in a way that doesn't make the person feel like either alienated or like there's something wrong with them. And I think just asking, one of the things I do is make sure that in the initial, I'm very open and tell everybody I'm neurodivergent anyway. So already they've got a level of, if they are neurodivergent, oh, she'll get it kind of thing, even though everybody's experiences are different. But I think it's just making sure that you're doing that with your neurotypical people as well. So, so there's lots of different ways that we can deliver information. And I think sometimes we get stuck in, this is how we do it. So this is how it's always been done. And making that change as well, or being the person to do things differently, can actually be quite daunting as well, can't it, for some people? And yeah, it's just raising that awareness of actually we can do different things differently. We are allowed to, ask questions, but in a way that isn't intrusive or doesn't make the person feel a certain way. So I know for me, boundaries has been a really important part of running my business and my journey, and implementing those boundaries hasn't always been easy. But when it comes to boundaries from a personal perspective, or one that you help clients with, could you just share a little bit about how you approach boundaries and why they matter so much, particularly if you're neurodivergent?
So in terms of why they matter, it comes back to the energy management side of things. When you're working with people in any capacity, it's a high output job, And you said yourself, we do kind of need to put ourselves first, which is not what we're taught to do in society. It's not what we're, supported with in businesses, and it can be a really steep learning curve. It certainly was for me.
Yeah.
So boundaries are not a way of being harsh with people, being controlling, being selfish. Boundaries get a lot of kind of misinformation and ill feelings towards them, but boundaries really are there to protect you first and foremost, so that you look after your needs and ultimately can look after your clients. And also it sets clear expectations. So the really interesting thing about boundaries, going back to what you were saying earlier about emotional safety, is when people don't know what's allowed, it naturally creates a little bit of unease. They don't know that they can phone you, or they don't know that they can email you, or they don't know they can ask for this. So the more that you can kind of give people that information up front, not only does it help with the emotional safety side of things, it also helps manage expectations, which just sets the tone for, a really, really good working relationship moving forward. I'll be honest, when I was younger, when I had my dog business, I had no boundaries. I didn't even know really what boundaries were. I just didn't have that level of awareness, and I learned the hard way. I worked, Christmas, I had a dog board and daycare walking, and I did a little bit of training. And I would work Christmas, I would take things last minute, because I wanted to help. And over time, I learned that wasn't, the most sustainable way to do business, let's put it that way. So I learned a lot doing it that way. So now, I'll be honest, like, I genuinely have wonderful clients. I have a very open relationship with clients because I communicate quite a lot in the beginning, and I'm very open. But when I'm working with dog businesses, the interesting thing about boundaries is a lot of the time we don't necessarily equate how we're feeling and the problems that we have with the need to have better boundaries. So that's kind of one thing that I just want to share, is if you are getting to the end of your week and your energy is through the floor and you're really overwhelmed and you're really, really stressed, it might possibly be, if we had to kind of backtrack a little bit, actually there might have been 3 occasions this week where someone cancels on you last minute, you had to rearrange your whole day for someone, someone said they were going to pay and didn't, and then you had to open up a space for a class, and then that took an hour of admin time that you hadn't planned for, and then before you know it, that obviously spills into your week. So boundaries are really, really important. But it's just having to think about, again, what you need, and recognizing you don't need to have the same boundaries, and you don't need to run your business in the same way that someone else does. And again, that's quite a common thing of like, oh, that person offers 24/7 support, so I'm going to do that. And then actually recognizing you're not someone who can offer that level of support, but you could offer it between Monday to Friday or Monday to Thursday or whatever that is. So again, just giving yourself permission to have a think about how you want to work and making those changes and communicating it with clients.
Yeah, definitely. And like you say, boundaries are one of the things that, if we're not careful, that can lead us very quickly to burnout. And I think burnout is one of it's kind of like a bit of a buzzword, but I think it's a really important topic to speak about because especially if you're neurodivergent, like managing those energy levels and understanding what our needs are as a dog professional is super important. Like I mentioned earlier in the chat, that I definitely suffered burnout when, my values weren't aligning. I was trying to run a business for, a completely different way to what actually suited me and my needs. So when it comes to burnout, what advice would you give to somebody if they were starting to notice those initial signs and thinking, actually, if I carry on, I am going to burn out? What kind of advice could you give to them? And when it comes to you personally, how do you manage that in terms of self-care with your making sure that you don't burn out?
Burnout, like you say, sometimes it can be a little bit of a buzzword, and I think it's important to say, like, there is different degrees of burnout, and there will be times where actually having, a mental health professional and, other forms of support is actually what's going to be needed. But if we're kind of focusing on the earlier signs, I think first one is familiarizing yourself with those signs, because I think a lot of the time, again, it's very common with neurodivergent business owners, but across the board, is when we're struggling, and whatever that looks like, whether it's managing our workload, keeping up with things, it could be managing our housework alongside running a business, like keeping ourselves fed. Like there's a whole side of things that we've not had time to talk about. But if you're really, really struggling, a lot of the time there's quite a lot of shame attached to that, and it's like, oh, there's something wrong with me, I just need to be more organized, I just need to work harder. How are other people managing this? I just need to get my act together. And that's the point when it can be really quite harmful, when we stay quite isolated. So it feels like a very counterintuitive piece of guidance, and I say this as also someone who has worked through burnout and came out the other side, that as soon as we start to recognize that, don't just immediately sweep it under the carpet and think, oh, it'll be all right, I just need a weekend off, I just, it'll be fine. Because we can get very much stuck in that loop of just kind of being in survival mode. And again, not everyone's got a support network, and I'm very, very aware that everyone's circumstances are different. But if there is people that you do trust, whether it is friends, family, colleagues, or coaches, mentors, different groups you're in, if you're part of an organization, do they have any resources? Is there any previous calls or discussions in the group that you could just be a part of, so that you feel like you're not on your own? The tricky thing with burnout is a lot of the time, the kind of guidance says, oh, just take a break. That's not always possible. In an ideal world, yes, but it's not always possible for everyone. So I think there's things that we can do in the short term to ease pressure. Obviously, if there's extra support needed, taking those steps. But I think the most important thing with burnout is to recognise what's led us there, and we're not always able to work through that on our own. So I'm a huge advocate of counselling and therapy, just as I am with coaching. I've used all of them at different times, and they each serve different purposes. So that's always something that I'm a big advocate of, if you do need support, there might be different forms that would be most supportive for your needs. So recognise it, share with people that you trust, put in some short-term strategies if you can, but also consider, what might need to change in the long term. Is it your boundaries? Is it the structure of your business? Is it that you need more support?
Yeah, definitely. And to finish off with, to kind of round it all up before we go into the quick fire questions, what's one message or bit of advice that you think that every neurodivergent dog professional needs to hear?
It's a really good question, and I'm definitely not great at kind of short-winded. I have a little bit of a saying, and basically it's that our current capacity doesn't need to equal our future capabilities. It's one of my favourite phrases. And basically what that means is our current situation is influenced by so many things, external factors, what's going on in our life. And yes, we might be struggling with things just now, but that doesn't mean over time that things can change or circumstances can change, and we can actually move in the direction that we want to. So sometimes when you're in it, it can feel like you're the only person struggling and that nothing's ever going to change, but actually it's just getting the right support, having conversations, listening to conversations. And I suppose the last thing is, yes, there is a lot of challenges that come along with being neurodiverse, but there's so many strengths, and really being around other people who remind you of those strengths is important.
Amazing. Yeah, definitely. So, right. So to finish off with, what I do with all of my podcast guests is fire 5 quick round questions at you, just so we can get to know you a little bit more. Don't worry, they're super easy. So the first one, are you ready?
Okay, I'm listening.
The first one is tea or coffee?
Tea.
See, nice and easy. It's nice to have people in the tea camp. The coffee camp is normally the most popular. So if you had to pick one, what is your favourite dog breed?
Oh, Border Collie.
Oh, nice. What is your go-to dog product you use or recommend all the time?
Pet Remedy.
Nice, yeah. And we've not had that one yet. Interesting. I love doing these questions because you find out so much about people just from these little quick fire questions. So if you had to pick one again, would it be a lead walk or off-lead adventure?
Off-lead adventure every time.
Amazing. And the last one, what is your favourite way to recharge after a busy day?
doing something that allows me to put my brain on a shelf. As someone with a very hyperactive mind, sometimes it can be challenging. So it could be reading a book, going for a walk in the garden, going for a swim, pottering, anything that takes me out of my own head and just allows me to decompress a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely got that. My most recent one, I was chatting with somebody the other day, and it seems really strange. Was the other day, I just realised that by sitting in the garden, I was literally just watching. I've got like a lavender plant on the table, and I was just watching the bees in it. And I was watching it sway in the wind, and like it just completely. My mind was like focused on something because it's that kind of like ADHD. You're looking for things, aren't you? But I was just staring at it, just watching this bee, and everything else was just emptying out of my mind. So like that was, I was like, oh, I'm going to do this more often. But it seems really strange if you say, I'll just sit in a chair and stare at a plant. But and
Okay.
if people are interested in learning a little bit more about what you do, how can they get in touch with you, and how can get more information on everything that you do?
Yeah, so pretty easy to find me. The main place is on Facebook, so Coaching by Sasha Louise Smith. That's where I'm most active. That's where, I share a lot of content about business strategy and all the other things that we've spoken about. Also have the website. It's a continued project, but it gives you an overview of what I do. And at the moment, I'm focused on creating some more blog content. So there's a couple of blogs on there, and there'll be some more coming. So those are the best places to find me.
Amazing. And as usual, we'll put those links down in underneath the podcast as well. So I've really enjoyed it chatting to you. And it's something that this topic, I think we could chat about so much more. And it could be like, a continuous series. But I think the listeners will get so much value just from listening to this podcast episode. So thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us. We have really, really enjoyed it. So if you're new to listening to the podcast, make sure that you hit follow or subscribe so you never miss a future episode. Thank you very much for listening. So it's goodbye from me and goodbye from Sasha.